Here we go. Many thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again from the Academy of the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation. It is my great pleasure to introduce the French Minister of Public Service and Civil Transformation, or the full name would be Public Sector Transformation and Civil Service. As we know, France is a leader in Europe when it comes to open data, and we have learned a lot in Europe from the French case, so to say, especially regarding reference data. Do we have online the minister?
I'm here.
Perfect. Amélie, nice to see you and glad to listen to your keynote and looking forward to the discussion later with the State Secretary Markus Richter. Please, the floor is yours, virtually.
Guten Tag. I will switch to English because I understand not everybody is a German speaker today, and I will spare you my French, which will be used during the French presidency of the Council for sure. First of all, many thanks for inviting our country also to present both our strategy and also our results so far when it comes to data, and how also the COVID crisis changed not only the vision we had on data, but also changed the pace of change. Many thanks to the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung for the opportunity to join this EU Data Summit, and also the joy to have along my speech, the one of Markus Richter, which with whom I met very recently. And I must say that the coalition agreement now includes many topics which are of great interest and are a follow-up of many discussions we've had previously. 2021 has been a strong and an important year for our data transformation in France, and I would like to share with you the main both objectives I've set to my ministry, and also how we managed to increase the pace of transformation coming from strategies which were designed and started to be implemented sometimes 5 to 10 years ago. Open data is not the only topic I would like to address, because I think the challenges we face in the public sector are also about data circulation between ministries to break all the silos we can observe in our very complex organizations, and also how to make better use of data when it comes to really define and conduct public policies in many, many different sectors. There are 3 things I would like to share, which are our main objectives. One is quality, the second is openness, and the third is protection and sovereignty, and is a follow-up to the previous discussion you were having on GaiaX and cloud and other issues. But before to go on quality, openness, and sovereignty, maybe 2 quick words on why we've really increased our ambition in 2021. It's not very complex to say that data is everywhere, that the crisis, COVID crisis, because of the new way we work, the new way we interact, also put more and more digital and data at the center of our lives. But we cannot imagine a society where all the public cultural education activities are more and more digital, and the public and administrative life is detached from this movement. We've seen also that during the crisis, opening data, sharing public data was key to restore trust, key to be efficient, key to be able to take decisions which were pertinent and effective. And the Prime Minister, therefore, in this context, gave a very new and strong impetus to public policy on data in 2021. And as a follow-up of this work that was undertaken by all the ministries, I announced and published 15 ambitious roadmaps, one for each ministry, for the opening up, the circulation, and the use of data. This is concretely 500 different actions that will be taken and implemented in the next 18 to 24 months in all the ministries by all the sectors of public action, It will go to opening up 70 public data sets, which were not open yet, but also, and I will come back to this, really increasing our capacity to interact with civil society, with companies, with citizens, and using data also as a new mean to build our public action. If we then start with quality, as I said, it was my first priority. Here, the question, the issue at stake, is to reinvent the relationship between administrations and their users, being them citizens or companies, and to do so by increasing and better using data that circulates. Today, we know that 75% of the relationship between a French and the administration is digital. It is a website, it is an app, it is an email. So the face now of public service, and I think it's the case in probably all European countries, the face of public service is data-driven and is digital. But to be then responding to the expectations of citizens, we must be sure that the quality of the data experience, of the digital experience, is at least comparable to what we experience when we book a travel, call a company service for a delivery. So we have to make sure that the quality is at the level of what we know outside of public actions. So the challenge we have is not only to dematerialize, is not to go to zero paper, it's really to digitalize and to use data at the heart of the public policies we conduct, with one first objective is to individualize. Make sure we can, because we know things about people, not because we are a big brother society, but because citizens give us a lot of data, we are able to really make their lives simple and to have a public service which adapts to everyone. We've undertaken in 2018 a major reform regarding our tax system. Now French pay taxes on their paycheck directly every month. It was not built in that way before, but the way we reformed made us able last year in 2020 to have 12 million French households who didn't have to fill any form for the taxes. They were pre-filled and they were automatically established without any individual and personal intervention. We have an outcome which I want to share, 80% of satisfaction. Okay, we are a country where we pay taxes like everywhere, maybe a bit more even than other countries, but the quality of the service really was a key factor of trust between citizens who pay taxes and the state. Other than quality, other improvements in quality can be coming out of this reform, because we connect now the tax data we have on the income every French has in every month of its professional life or as a retiree. We can pre-fill and pre-detect if you are eligible to certain social support, to legal aid, to pay your lawyer if you are a low-income person and needing the support of a lawyer. Again, without any procedure, without any filling of any form, being it on a paper or on a screen. We also now have a tool which is France Connect. France Connect is our EID public identification system used by 32 million French now. And we're now connecting every local authorities for them also to identify with France Connect. And by doing so, being able to pre-fill with data on tax, on family condition, on all the data that we collect as the state, also to support and modernize the procedures done by local authorities. And it can go to the price of the food you pay at the municipal school, to the subscription to a library or book service managed by a city, and so ever. So it's really data at the heart of daily life procedures that the French know very well and can be very burdensome, that we now derived from our tax reform. Second element in terms of quality is that we have now the plan to have a system that can pre-warn you of procedures that you will have to do because your ID card needs to be renewed, because we detected that you are now a retiree person and that some things are opened for you, but you might not know about them. And sometimes even suppress procedures by having them going totally automatic. In the current movement of increase of price for energy and fuel, we are now having a system where we support a certain number of households, 5 million of them, through direct detection of who they are, what is the condition, and how we can support. I know that this proactive administration is also part of the contract of the new German coalition, and I think it's a very interesting topic on how we think public service in the era of data. That was my first point, quality. The second point I want to mention briefly, but I think is extremely strategic, is openness. As you mentioned, France has been leading the way on the open data strategy. Open data is not about data. Open data is about trust, is about democracy, is about the relationship we can also build with other actors than ourselves, between ministries and between the public silos we might know. Open data is what, for me, is essential to put in the debate so as we can restore trust, increase transparency, and we know that about vaccines and all the COVID environments, how we make sure that we can also give feedback to the citizens on what we do, what are the sources of our knowledge, how we take decisions, and why we take these decisions. We have, with President Macron, published in January 2021, a very innovative way to give feedback to the citizens of what we do, where they live, and we give on 40 priority policy action on jobs creation, on health, on education, on transportation, on all the issues you can imagine, which are at the core of the commitments the President Macron took in 1917. We now are able to give on a quarterly basis, county by county, at the scale of each of our départements. You know, we have 100 of them that are splitting up the territory, on what has happened since 2017 and what we aim at doing, so now in 2022, but to show to the people how we make progress, but also to give transparency on issues where we are not at the level we want to be, and to restore trust in giving feedback. On these roadmaps I mentioned to you on what the ministries will also do, we are now opening up data related to the protection of the population, on road safety, on the fight against drugs. We're also opening up all our research funding to give real access to the citizens, to everybody who wants, which laboratories we are funding, with which amounts, how it's complemented by European funds, and so on. We're also opening up the code, the source code of many of our algorithms, typically the one that put the pupils from the 9th grade to the high schools, for parents to know and experts to explain to parents how the algorithm is built. On this openness, I think the transparency is also essential when it comes to the digital action of the state. So openness on the openness strategy, in a way. In that direction, I've also announced very recently a fully revamped ambition on free and open source software in administration. Again, France has been leading the way historically on the use of free and open source softwares in the public sector. In the recovery plan and the European funding that we are developing and deploying in the country, most of the budgets are deployed using free and open source softwares in our ministries and in local authorities. And we also now are working on a bill with our data protection authority, the CNIL, to have a real-time transparency on the data which are shared between administration. because we had before a very legal approach to know what was authorized in terms of data circulation. Now we will give access to this CNIL, Data Protection Authority, to the actual nature of data circulating and how we are really using data, and not only how we are allowed to use data. And I also launched on Monday a new tool, which the name is Mon France Connect, so My France Connect, that allows citizens to know the data we have on them and to make sure they are accurate, and for them also to have transparency on what we collect and detain. Finally, this openness is also a key condition to work with civil society to enlarge the sphere of those who contribute to the general interest. As I often said, the state has not the monopoly on the general interest, and data is the key factor to make sure we can have partners and we can expand the number of people, type of people, and actors who can support the transformation of public action. Coming now to my last point, we cannot imagine data and digital transformation for the states without thinking about data protection and sovereignty. I think GDPR is an extremely important strategic move. In France, you know, we had as early as 1978 a Data Protection Act. It provided us a culture of data protection, but I think it's very good that now we have a European common framework to also think and create also markets for companies that can respect our values and expand their own activities. Data portability, you were mentioning this before, is, we know, still small compared to what the GDPR allows. And this is why we also recently improved and increased the resources and the positions inside our French Data Protection Authority, because we want to make sure that the balance is kept between how we protect data, but how also we take benefit from this data to respond to challenges in our societies. We also see that data protection is important, and even more important now in terms of COVID. We have had many debates on health data, but I think what we are now working at the European level with the Data Governance Act, with the Data Act, are topics on which we must be very ambitious, very concrete, and be also in terms of training, in education, in how we make European citizens understand what are the goals we pursue, and not just make these debates experts' debate. For me, it's very important. And on this sovereignty and protection, for me, a key question is how the choices we make today, choices of hosting of data, cloud providers, algorithms we develop, can be reversible. Not only portable between actors, but reversible. I think at the heart of democracy, there is this idea that an elected government can undo democratically what previous governments have done. And thinking this reversibility of our technological and data choices is absolutely, for me, essential. This is why we have to be clear on the technologies we use, the technologies we buy, that we have a systematic and permanent control over data, that we have to have very strict rules to protect ourselves against extraterritoriality. When it comes to data hosting, this is why in France we now have a doctrine on cloud use. So cloud is the default option of the development of all our projects when it comes to data. But the cloud hosting is internal to the state, or when it's external, we have designed rules which are both cyber crash test rules, technical ones, but also legal ones, to make sure that data given to a public actor in France cannot go to any data servers of any intelligence service on the west of the Atlantic or at the east of our continent. And we have to have this trust established at the heart of our choices. So to sum up, we're investing massively because of the recovery plan to transform, to accelerate. on cyber, on data circulation, on data use, on technology and infrastructure. But the key words for me are quality. It must really respond to the need of people in a simple way. It has to be open because we are public actors and we are not companies. And I think even companies can rebuild trust with their own customers by opening up sources, software, codes, and data. And we have to be very strong and strict on sovereignty and data protection. And here's my commitment also during the French presidency, which is coming, to make sure that on these data protection and sovereignty, we can build a European vision on how public actors throughout the continent can have common guidelines, so as our European companies can not only sell solutions in France with the French legal framework, in Germany with the German legal framework, but can expand their markets and really build these European unicorns that we are so much all expecting, to have partners and providers that respect our values and the legal vision we have on how the societies can work. This is the key elements I was willing to share with you, and thank you again for inviting me.
Dear Amélie, it was really great overview. You touch upon not only open data, but the whole area of issues in the European context. As you know, we are discussing tomorrow Gaia X. There is some interesting development, unfortunately, with Scaleway, the French provider that we're going to discuss tomorrow. But what matters today were your statements really regarding the whole spectrum of the digital landscape in France and your view of open data not as a data, but as a democratic issue. So, in that respect, we have Markus Richter. Dear State Secretary, please join us. He is also the federal CEO of the German, on the floor? Yeah, yes. He's also the federal CEO of the German government. As you know, we have adopted the second open data law not last year, but a couple of months ago. That was one of the measures already implemented in the part of the data strategy of the current government, but we know how difficult was it. I remember one sentence a couple of years ago when the UK cabinet office chef was in our foundation. He said, like, he had a message to the German government. He said something like, there is no governmental data, there is only data that is in possession of government. So I would like to congratulate for the new spirit that you brought in the public administration with your work, with your approach, and we are really glad to listen to you. What can we expect in the coming months, in the coming period? As we know, the new government also has some promising stuff when it comes to open data. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you to Amélie, because it's always a pleasure to listen to you. And at the same time, it's not just the two of us who are in an exchange, it's our teams. And it's great to learn from each other. There were exchange, for instance, on the question on how to improve dashboards so that decision makers within the public administration can have tools which they put them into a position to really do this data-driven decisions in a more easy way. So thank you very much for this open cooperation, because that's what needed when it comes to open data. We are talking not only about one branch or one ministry in Germany. We are talking about Europe in the end. We are talking about the question on how to improve life for people. So everyone is talking in these days of a booster vaccination. In the end, open data is the booster to make happening the digitization, especially in the public administration. Because when we achieve that the business sides within the public administration sees themselves as the ones who are responsible for using data, for making data accessible, then we are really moving forward and having this kind of booster also by digitization. Everyone tells in these days also that we have a real push through COVID in the field of digitization. I'm not that sure. Yes, indeed, we are doing video conferences and other stuff, and I think for many people it's now easier to understand for what purpose we are doing all of this. But in the end, we will have a real push when we achieve to make open data happening. And indeed, there were just recently in Germany some major steps forward. I don't want to link to the ranking of the EU. I mean, Germany was formerly at the place of 13. Now it's on the place of 8. So a little bit forward the direction, but we are still not there where we want to be. And I think everyone is clear on this. So therefore, I think it's the right step that we undertook with the Open Data Act here in Germany to make more fields of data accessible for open data, like research data, but also to make clear that open data by default is not just a sentence, it's really hard work to make this happening. And also this is a part of the act. And if I see also the question on how to really make it happening, we are talking there about real hard work, and therefore I think it's also the right access that we implement right now open data coordinators in every agency, and that we've got a federal administration agency which is a kind of a competence center for all these activities. So we really have to make an operation to make all these things now happening. And we have also just recently launched a open data strategy. And of course, also this is just a first step, but we have to undertake more action, and we have to be more faster to implement these activities which are now based on these fields. I'm glad that the new government took up really these initiatives, and they are planning to implement a claim that puts actors into the position to go to court if data is not provided in a way that it can be used as open data. Of course, we are addressing with this also the data protection issue. Amélie just mentioned it. I think it's mostly important to make clear about what we are talking here. Even if open data is linked together, and if we try to receive new insights out of these open data, it's still a kind of data which is not directly related to individuals. So this is, I think, something we have to make clear. And let me maybe do the last point by saying what is the purpose? I mean, there are now many new tools on the way. As I mentioned, the dashboard, which was created by the Federal Data Agency called Germany Dashboard. This one makes visible across several branches what can be achieved by open data. There are great examples if we see, for instance, small things like an accident survey, so that cities can see, oh, where do we have in our city hotspots of car accidents, and how can we improve these systems? All of these informations were received out of the open data, and therefore it's really about helping people, helping the economy, making research better, and especially making the decision processes within the public administration faster and more efficient. Because the world is getting complexer, and still, especially in crisis, but also out of crisis situations, we have to be faster by making decisions and keep the quality of these decisions great. And therefore, I think it's important that we implement more open data, make it machine readable. and having a transparency. And therefore, I'm also thankful for France that we cooperate in these fields and bring these open data together. And my vision is really to create in Europe a data lake, especially maybe also for the public administration, because many of the big challenges of our times will be only solved if we have best access to data across Europe and maybe abroad, because I think in the end we are all standing together. So thank you very much, and I'm really looking forward now I think we all do, for the new government. It's great that they took up many of these initiatives, and that there will be also a data institute which will also help by making all these different aspects come together, to link them together. And I think it's the right way, it's the right time, and we have to be pretty fast.
Many thanks. Please take your seat, dear Markus. Indeed, the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation issued many times political recommendation when it comes to Open Data Institute and a claim for open data, because we truly believe that it will make the difference. You are addressing, you and Amélie, the issue of leadership. Actually, I would like to say that open data is a matter of leadership. When the message comes from the top, then open data works. Otherwise, it doesn't function. Dear Amélie, you have mentioned that about, I hope I have understood you right, that about 75% of your digital services are digitized. Does it mean that also 75% of your decisions are data-driven?
So there are many percentages on which we can talk. Indeed, we have taken the commitment to digitalize 100% of the 250 most common administrative procedures that the French do on their daily lives, if they are citizens or if they are companies. This commitment of the 100% is at the end of the mandate of President Macron, so we still have 7 months to go. And at the moment, when I'm speaking to you now, we are around 86%. So we are on track to have put on digital the most frequent and commonly used procedures of French in their administrative life. We have invested a lot to make sure that all people, if they are having disabilities, whatever type of disability, can also use these digital tools. It's a major investment. I think we are not so many countries investing on this inclusiveness of the digital tools for disabled people. And I will finish now the year, we will finish the year with around half of our digital procedures being also open and accessible to all people, whatever the disability, if they have one. In this idea, indeed, because it's digital, it can then improve the public policy behind the procedure. This is where these roadmaps of every ministry is absolutely essential, because if I'm speaking a bit in a way which is a bit simple, but administrations today have treasuries of data. We are opening up a lot of this data, but we are not exploiting data always in a way to really make our public policies functioning, performing, and addressing issues better. So this is the next step. But indeed, with France Connect, this ID, sovereign ID, public ID used by 32 million French, we are now more and more using data in the heart of public policies. And I can give you the commitment that in 5 years now on, in 2027, I'm sure we will have solved a huge number of small problems, but which become big problems because of the knowledge we are now having.
5 years is a realistic term, and we will follow you, definitely. But what about the situation in Germany? How far are we from a data-driven government, or how close?
Well, my point of view is that we undertook quite efforts now, and we undertake great efforts to improve it, because we are not there where we want to be. I think it's mostly important to see that we want to digitize all our public services by the end of next year. I know it's quite ambitious. The federal level will achieve this, but the question is how do we scale all these services within Germany? And behind all these services, there are of course coming more and more data together, and it's the question about transparency, so that we have transparency and could be in the position to predict developments out of these data. And secondly, how the business sides within the public administration really use these information for better decision. And this roadmap is the basic for implement also open data really for a purpose within the public administration. And that's our aim. That's what we are working right now on. And I think we did great step that we have now this open data strategy. I know we have to improve it further. We have to say more clear which really steps are within the strategy, because a strategy is always a framework where we're working within, and we have to be a little bit more ambitious. But I'm really grateful that there are now so many actors coming together on the federal level, the states, and we are working on this together. And therefore, it's really about the question to have also the infrastructure coming up, what we are right now working on, because you always have to have also kind of a marketplace which should be linked to other ones within Europe, as I said, and at the same time to have a standard for the open data, so that it's really machine readable. And all these activities are a part of this strategy, of this action plan. And as I said, it's great to see that now with the new government there is coming a further push through governance, because all of what we are talking here are at many points really governance questions. How do we organize this process? And it's a question of cultural change, because it's not possible anymore in many fields to do the work as we were used to it. There's so much data available, so much information. No one is in the position to read all of this. There should be machine readable, there should be tools to assist, and therefore I think it's the right access, and to also improve our agencies in this direction. That's what we are working on.
You have both mentioned the COVID crisis, and you said it could be a booster, but it's not a real booster yet. In the context of the COVID crisis, we had the discussion, you remember last year, regarding the use of personal data. And I told the digital minister of Taiwan that I'm going to ask you this question, that I asked also her. And that is, do we need a socially functioning compromise between personal data on the one hand and innovations and public interest on the other hand? Amélie, maybe you would start?
Yes. I think that opposing protection on the one hand and sharing and openness on the other is a risk. And for me, it's not the right balance. I think we should find, I don't know if it's a compromise, but we need to show how we can use and really use data in a efficient and serving way, because sometimes we lack concreteness in these debates. When I want to help a very old woman having a very low pension to give her access to a social support aid that exists, well, I need to use personal data on her, but not to track her, not to control her, but to support. So I think the idea in GDPR is, what is the purpose you are looking at to use and collect and retain data. In the public sector, I think we have to be very clear to find the conditions under which we can use really data to really respect protection and privacy, but to serve public goals that democratically were voted and are seen as legitimate goals. This is for me the real question. It's not about data, it's about the objective we pursue and the means we give ourselves to really, in a way, achieve what we say to the people we will do. And this is, for me, the most important question. Then we have lots of possibilities. We have pseudonymization, we have aggregation, we have anonymization. We can notify people, say, do you agree that, if we think it's a bit touchy. So I think the technical options exist. But for me, the key question at the moment is, are we clear that given the tools now that technology offers to us, can we better serve people in the way members of parliament and ministers make promises to the people and take commitments? And for me, this is at the heart of the trust or the mistrust we have now in our societies, because people are not foolish. They listen to us, they see the outcome, and they realize that probably we can do better. And we can also do better thanks to technologies and data, that we have to make very transparent how we do it, what we know about them, why we cross data, and what is the objective to pursue.
So trust matters when it comes to this issue. By the way, closely related issue to this issue is the issue of business to government data sharing, and I'm glad that we have a perfect collaboration with Simon Gignard from ETALab, who is really regularly attending the European Data Summit, and we have learned a lot from him. But Markus, what do you think about this compromise? Is it a difficult issue, or are we on the wrong track?
Well, first of all, let me make it clear that when we talk about open data, then open data per definition, there we are talking about data which is not directly linked to an identity of a single person. But I think we in Germany have to undertake more discussions about the value of data. We see it in many cases when we talk about the Corona warning app, for instance, which we implemented here, or also when we look what kind of data are shared from individuals with the public administration to receive services. I think we should have a discussion, a cultural discussion in Germany, first of all about the question, what is the purpose of digitization? I think we have a great common sense there in Europe, because we just recently launched and decided all together on a Berlin Declaration, which puts the values into the center. So the purpose is important, and to have a discussion about digital first. I think we are moving now really good forward with the digitization of public administration, and there will be more and more services available in the digital way. And I think to have a discussion about should this digital way should be the first one, the prioritized one, and should the other one maybe cost a little bit more because there are more people involved to work on this, is an important discussion which will come up in Germany. And a part of this is also the question, how do we deal with data and for what purpose? I think transparency is there the key word. Amélie just mentioned a cockpit. We are also implementing a cockpit right now regarding the question of one-stop government, so that people know and can see on their mobile device where is my data stored and who is having access to this. And we will improve then the system so that people have the possibility to also agree on the data use through, for instance, public agencies for a specific topic. And I think, therefore, transparency is the basis for acceptance, and I'm pretty sure we are moving now forward in the digitization, and there will be this discussion, and I think we need it in Germany, and to make clear for what purpose and under which circumstances we collect data to improve the system.
Are there any?
If I may, maybe just have a
Sure. I would like to make the notice that there is also possibility for a question from the audience. So if you want to ask the minister something, please let me know. Please, Amélie.
There is a very interesting parallel with the discussion we're now having. Citizens in all European countries during many, many years filled paper forms on which they were giving a lot of information. But as it was papers, it was seen as, you know, bureaucracy doing its work, and people were giving a lot of data. But people had the impression it was going to one person, to one then a big paper form archive system, and that it was fine. The parallel I want to make is, because it's digital, now people reflect a bit more. Do I really want to give this information? How is this going to be stored? Who will have access to it? Can it be reused in many, many years? That's the new debate emerging, and I think the corona crisis, in a way, because all our lives became more or less digital for a while, people realized this exchange of knowledge, which was not based anymore on paper, but on digital. The parallel I want to make is hate speech on social media. We now tolerate on our social media anti-Semitic, racist, extremely violent content that if it were on a newspaper, on the walls on our cities, in the tube or whatever, people would be extremely shocked. So there is a strange sense of things that were seen as normal in a non-digital world now as raise questions, which are legitimate ones we have to answer, and this was a discussion of data. But there are also things that were not seen as normal in a non-digital world that are now tolerated in the digital sphere. So I think we have to be very clear on the new debates emerging, but also to be very clear on we cannot tolerate that because it's digital, it's less important and it's more tolerable. And I think it's an interesting parallel that we can here think about.
Thank you. We have one question, I believe, from the audience. Please, Lucas.
Yes, thank you very much. My question touches upon the actual implementation of the open data strategy. So it would be, how would you actually implement it, and which role would take the states, so in Germany the Bundesländer, or in France the Département, and which role does the federal government take? So how are the competencies distributed, or who's actually responsible for implementing the strategy? And then for the citizens, would the services differ, for example, from state to state, or is it a unified service that would be offered in all over Germany, or what are the approaches in that sense?
Please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The strategy in Germany is a federal one, so it's the one which addresses in the first step the federal ministries and agencies, and these are the actions which are within it. We have within the strategy this competence center linked at located at the federal Office of Public Administration, which is located in Köln. And then we've got these coordinators, which are just, we implement them right now within all agencies on the federal level. And through this, we get a real task force to make it happening, because there are obligations. There are already obligations, but let me say it like this, I'm not sure if everyone is aware of this, and therefore I think we have to work on this. And of course, there is a link to the states within Germany, because it's important, of course, that we are not only working on islands, we have to work closer together, and therefore I'm happy we are in an exchange with the CIOs of the Länder, of the states, and to also link together the actions which are there. I think we need a framework and which is then enforceable for everyone. So when the new coalitions now implement such a claim possibility, then this is something which not only addresses the federal level, of course, but also the states and actually every agency, and therefore we need this common action plan which we should elaborate on the basis of the coalition contract which is now on the table.
Many thanks. Dear Amélie, would you like to
Yes,
comment on this?
so in France we have a very simple law article saying that every administrative structure, being it a city, a department, a region, or whatever you want, a ministry or a state, if it covers more than 3,500 inhabitants, this structure, whatever its size, has to publish in open data a quite infinite list of things that can be published in an aggregated manner, because indeed, as Markus reminded very clearly, we're not publishing individual data, we're publishing outcome data, aggregated data. But to be very clear with you, not all the cities of 4,000 inhabitants in France are putting all the data they should or they could open. So we're now, and this law has been voted in 2016. We have now a quite diverse situation. Many collectivities, local authorities have implemented this move, others not yet. We are investing, giving money for them to speed up, and so that's for the local authority part, and for the governance at the federal, so in France, the national level, as we say. We have now chief data officers in every ministry. We have a governance on open data which is very strong, very clear. We have norms on how data should be published. So as Markus was saying, they can be machine readable. We have also frequencies on which we need to update a certain number of data sets, for also businesses or civil society to use them on a trusted manner. So France has been on open data working now for more than 10 years, very actively, and we've learned. We had some failures, we now have some successes, but yes, we are pushing all local authorities above 3,500 inhabitants to publish data, and we have lots of networks helping these smaller entities to achieve these objectives.
Many thanks. As we know, open data is a costly issue. It costs money as well. And I think the debate a couple of years ago, claiming open by default, create also a bit damage in the public administration. And now we move more in direction publishing with purpose. What do you think regarding this?
Well, actually, everything what we are doing in the end costs also money. But I think we have to make clear that when it comes to public sector, it's not in the first step a question of how can we improve the system that we save the most of money. What we are talking about is making the life of people better and the life of economy better. And therefore, it's an obligation to use the information which are available to make the decision-driven process more quickly and having out of them results which are out of the quality which we need for good decisions. And therefore, yes, I'm convinced we will save money by the end. And it's hard to predict how much it will be and how it will be. And I think this is not the first question. The first one is, how can we make in this complex world decision-making processes quicker and faster and having good results out of it. This is what we are dealing with. And therefore, I can say that all these people who are dealing with this, we need more people who are able to deal with it. We are implementing now these coordinators. We need also education of the staff members within the public administration. And all this costs money, is an investment, but in the end, there is a purpose. And I think we have to be open to these arguments and to be also transparent and clear about that there is money needed to do all of this. And in the end, it's not just one direction, that within the public administration we create data and we receive them, then out of them open data. It's also about the question, how do we use data which is there available by companies also for the public administration. So there is a big exchange, and also of course with the academia. So we have to really identify these sources of data and to make them accessible through standards, and then to share these informations. And I think everyone is clear on this, that this is also an investment.
Back to my question, so you have nothing against open by default?
Absolutely. Open by default is the key issue within the strategy and the Open Data Act. So this is a big shift within the culture. We say everything in the first step should be open data. There might be acceptance in specific areas, but you have to argue why these shouldn't be open data. So open by default is a very important principle.
Many thanks. Having in mind the time, Amélie, you can comment also on this issue as well, but maybe something what's really more interesting to us is we have, like, in 4 weeks the French presidency. Could you tell us maybe what can we expect in the field of digital sphere? Or I'm asking too much.
Just coming back on the point before, in one line, since 1789, I'm lost, with the French Revolution. So since then, with the Declaration of the Rights of the Human Rights and the rights of citizens in France, Déclaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen, the Article 15 states that every citizen can ask for feedback and transparency to the state. So it's a long-lasting process, and I think the cost of doing it is very small compared to the efficiency it creates, as Markus was saying, but also in the cultural shift it puts in the hands of those in charge of public action. We need to give feedback. We cannot do things without making sure that citizens can both understand what we do and know how we do it. So for me, it's a big HR cultural fight, and the cost of, yes, putting data out is very small compared to the cost of not doing it in the indirect manner. So what we will do, what is the objective we have for the French presidency in the field of digital and digital in the public area? There are 3 main topics for me which are very important and which we can make progress at a European scale. One is mobility in the civil service between member states, including when it comes to our tech, data and digital men and women, and I insist on the and women, because we also need to make sure that the whole society in its diversity is also included in the way we build data and digital services. So we are now, as you may know, in France, conducting a very profound reform on our top civil servant system to make it more attractive, more connected to the issues of the 21st century, more efficient. And in that area, we have built with the Portuguese presidency, another Slovenian one, and I want to thank Markus Richter to the openness also he signaled, to make sure that our teams can learn by each other, can spend time in other capitals in Europe, and that we learn by human exchanges and not just signing papers together on commitments we want to act together. Second priority is how we can share technology, tools, code, open software, all the things we do, we have each of us weaknesses and strengths. And if we can neutralize our strength and make our successes be also helping others to accelerate, we have to move really in that direction. We have now a small group of 10 countries, more or less, the coalition of the willing, where we try to have our teams and our ministries in giving access to the neighbors. We are all together to things that work in our countries, and when it's free and open source software, it's easy. Third objective is the transparency, what we mentioned just now, particularly on how we conduct reforms and how we can, all of us, have tools and not dashboards just for the internal use, but also tools that can give feedback to the citizens on what we do. We had discussion with the European Commission, with also European institutions on how this barometer, as I described to you, where in France we give on a quarterly basis the actual vision of what we produce in every department for every citizen, how we can expand this view to other countries and also European policies. These are three objectives which are, I think, things we can do and not, reaching too far, but things we can achieve and give concrete outcome to European citizens.
Many thanks. Dear Markus, do you have some final remarks?
No, I just can say it's really interesting. Maybe I can say something to France.
Yes, sure.
Because I learned a way on how organize governance, and it's quite impressive. Amélie told me once that she's got a survey, what's going on within the departements. And then she's visiting also the departements and see what is doing well, for instance, in the field of digitization, and what is not working so well and why. And out of this transparency to see where are the states standing, this is also quite interesting, I think, for Germany. I know we've got responsibilities on the federal level, on the states, in the cities, but in the end, everything has to fit together, and we've got common contracts within Germany, and to make this visible and to create more transparency where we are standing, it's really quite an interesting instrument. So thank you for the insights there.
Dear Amélie, we wish you lots of success for the French presidency. We are really happy that we had the conversation with you virtually. I know that you have met with Markus a month ago, but we thought it would be a nice opportunity to discuss open data before the French presidency again. Many thanks for that. We wish you a lot of success in implementing the open data strategy, and we are here to support you in your work. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Tschüss.